Yo, welcome back. Zach Lesage here from the Shuffle Squad. Today we're going to be covering over the best decks from the Paldea Evolved format. Now these are going to be the top 10 current best decks in the game. If you've seen me cover a similar video to this before, and you might be like, hey, is this just a repost or something like that? No, the decks are changing, the deck lists are changing, because as one deck sees success, other decks try to counter it, which means there's a new deck, which means other decks have to account for that countering. Makes sense, right? That being said, we're going to be covering over the top 10 decks. Lists are going to be available in the pinned comment if you're on YouTube. Otherwise, you can grab some screenshots from the video. If you haven't already, give this video a like, thumbs up, subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think about these decks. Put your best guesses for orders. All that good stuff boosts the algorithm on social media video platforms. And yeah, we'll explain the strategy, why the deck's positioned the way it is, and as much as we possibly can. But let's jump into that number 10 spot. Let's get it. The Shuffle Squad is proudly sponsored by Ultimate Guard, PTCGL Store, and Atlas TCG. Check out the description below for discount codes and affiliate links to support the squad. Now it's time for the video. Hopping in at number 10, we have Arceus Giratina. Now, this is a deck that's seen success. I mean, it won a regional championships in Portland regionals, so pretty recently, but that was in our Scarlet Violet format, not our Paldea Evolved format. Why is it seeing success, or why is it at number 10? Well, a lot of decks here can get hurt by Path, Judge, and Iono. And with this deck playing Bibarel, we have opportunities to get around those things. So we can Path, Judge, Iono, our opponent, and try to overcome them with strong 2 prize card Pokemon that have 280 HP. With access to 4 boss, Bibarel being Iono Judge proof, and being a generally simplified list, I think that this deck is just kind of the go-to standard for a deck that exists within the top 10. Might be placed low. I don't think it's necessarily placed high. Like, I think it might be placed lower, if anything, and this deck has the opportunity to rise. It does have a lot of good matchups at the top, but again, if you don't Judge Path or Iono Path your opponents into nothing, they might just be able to come back. This deck doesn't have a whole bunch going for it. It's pretty flimsy, even with that HP. So that's really where it's placed. But I think this deck has a lot of room to grow, and we're probably going to see a lot of players gravitate towards this being the more played or better arc variants heading into NAIC. Here we have one of the Paldea Evolved newcomers at number 9, Chien-Pao EX. Now, Chien-Pao EX is either too high or too low, and obviously that makes a lot of sense, or does not make sense at all, but I think, like, right now, the deck is still in its discovery phase. And what I mean by that is we're still trying to figure out exactly where this deck is at. We don't know what a proper list is. You'll see players like Alex Szymanski going with a 1-1 Arceus V-Star instead of the Palkia V-Star. I think a lot of the list is discovered when it comes like the Avery, Radiant Greninja plays, the Canceling Clone I really like in this deck for Manaphy. But the goal is really just going to be get up Baxcalibur, attach a bunch of water energies to your Pokemon in play, and this deck's good. The reason why this deck might struggle is Lost Zone decks are still seeing a lot of success in this metagame. No surprise there, and they might have a good matchup with this deck. Gardevoir can also get set up and attack with single prize card Pokemon. We'll have to see how it plays out, but for right now, I think this deck is probably an appropriate number 9. I could easily see the switching spots with Arceus, because if anything, I think this deck is seeing less success lately. So even when I created all these lists maybe a day ago, the deck's starting to see a lot less success online. So it's something to factor in when we are looking at these decks. I don't know how I feel about Chien-Pao. Really cool concept, and I've always loved me these Rain Dance type decks. I'm unsure about this one. Swinging into number 8 is Giratina V-Star in a Lost Zone box deck. Now, we've already seen this with the Arceus deck. We have it a little bit better with Lost Zone box. Why? Well, this deck is a Lost Zone box deck, so we're going to be using Comfey, Colress's Experiment, and just getting cards into our Lost Zone very quickly so we can attack with Cramorant, Sableye, use Mirage Gate. So this deck half plays out as like a normal Lost Zone box deck, and you're able to spread damage counters around, and that's cool with Sableye. The other half is that we have a late game powerhouse with Tina V-Star, and we're able to swing for 280 plus Choice Belt to knock out a lot of Pokemon. So considering that we have a lot of cool things going on here, I think that this deck is just like it's almost like, I don't want to be like budget Lost Zone box. It feels like diet Lost Zone box. That's probably what I'm looking for. Not as strong, a little bit more Iono proof because you have access to Tina V's first attack, and you also have access to being able to play some of those cards and having 280 HP to back things up. So I think there's some cool things going on with this list. Cool does not necessarily replace very good. So I think, well, like most of the decks on this list are suitable. They get the A-OK to play at tournaments. I think that Tina is one of those ones where it's just not as good as Lost Zone box decks, but it's still a Lost Zone box deck, so it's better than other decks. So kind of think about that when you're like choosing these other decks. I think it's like well positioned. It's not a bad choice. You can beat Lost Zone box. Does it really improve anything too much else? No. I'd almost even play like Rad Charizard over this, but that's just me. I've never been a huge fan of the Tina. I don't know why. I think it's really cool, but I think it's also like overrated and underrated at the same time. It's a weird take, but I'm sure if anyone has any ways to explain what I'm saying better, let me know in the comments. And again, all the lists are in the pinned comment for copy and pasting into PTCG Live if you're watching on YouTube. At number 7, I have one of the most interesting decks on this list, Reversal Gardevoir. Now, Reversal Gardevoir or Gardevoir Mewtwo V Union is definitely a deck. It's really hard to position when it comes to these decks. And a lot of people will say that it's disguised as a Gardevoir deck, but it's technically like these, you're attacking with a bunch of single prize card Pokemon, then sweeping up a game with a Mewtwo V Union at the very end. So we can sacrifice a lot of prize cards, then use Reversal Energy to our advantage, moving Reversal Energy with Gallade to one of our other Pokemon, and then at the end we're like, okay, cool, we can attack with Mewtwo V Union and everything's all good. I think it's interesting how we can kind of turn Gardevoir into a single prize card deck. I don't know if this is necessarily the correct way to do that, or if it is the correct way, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think, again, with a lot of these decks, as they're emerging, we're still trying to figure out the best way to build them, the best way to play them, and the best positioning. So this one might be a little low, it might be a little high, but it is a deck within our top 10 right now, because it's seeing some success online, and I think that there's a lot of capabilities there. Even if a deck doesn't see all the success online, remember that these are placed kind of against the other decks on the metagame and how they do within these top 10 decks. So I think Gardevoir is very well positioned in our current format. And maybe this version's better, maybe a regular Gardevoir build's better. We'll have to find out on this list. Swinging in is Fusion Mew. Now, Fusion Mew is not really a deck that has ever not been good. I mean, I think this deck's been good since the beginning when it was first released in Fusion Strike, and it got a couple new tricks when it came here. Largely, we're adding Ice Cube back into our deck when it comes to Fusion Mew, and that's because we are trying to snipe off routes and Frigibacks and Comphase and stuff whenever we have the opportunity. And of course, we grabbed Iono into this deck as well. So the Ice Cube is not from Paldea Evolved, but it's played in Paldea Evolved because of the way that the format's changed. The goal of this deck is to really use Alice's Sparkles, quickly power up our Pokemon, and start attacking with Mew or any of our Ice Cube, Deoxys, Meloetta cards. We have a lot of cards that allow us to either slow down our opponent with Path to the Peak, Lost City to take away our opponent's attackers, and of course we have some disruption cards in there too. I think this is really a well-rounded deck and currently underestimated in our formats. Sure, we might have Spiritomb and a few other cards that might counter Mew VMAX banned online. Mew VMAX has always held its own, and of course, Fusion Strike Energy can get around Spiritomb. So if you're playing any builds, I think this is a better build in a Spiritomb format, or a format where Spiritomb exists, I guess. When it comes down to it, I would probably just be playing Fusion Mew. So if you're a Mew player and you want to be playing Fusion Mew, I think it's pretty close. I think that's our number 6 deck, so we're getting pretty high up there on our list. Again, anything within the upper top of our list is like, there's really not a reason to not be playing it. I think a lot of it becomes personal preference. At one point, I used to believe that there was one best deck for every single tournament. I no longer believe the case with the numbers that we have. There's too much variance when it comes to deck decision. So usually when you want to be playing a top deck, it's usually a correct choice. Spreading damage all the way to number 5 is going to be a deck that I didn't think we were going to necessarily put here. Rapid Strike Inteleon, and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. It's one of these decks that has seen some light success online, but as our format's kind of evolved, with Paldea Evolved, there are a lot of Pokemon that you could take advantage of with Inteleon, Radiant Alakazam, Medicham. So the goal is to really place damage counters onto your opponent's Pokemon strategically, sometimes getting extra turns with Medicham or scoring freebie prize cards with Double Gunner. This deck is largely an evolution of the Rapid Strike Urshifu decks that we saw around the release of Battle Styles that dominated the Players' Cups. Rapid Strike Urshifu has seen a lot of success in general since those early days, but not really to the level that it once has before. So it was winning regional, or it did come first place or second place at a couple regionals last season. This season it's been a little quiet, and now it might be the chance for this deck to shine. I think that this is the type of deck that, even though it is well positioned, players will not play it because it is difficult to play. But I do think that it's truly worthwhile to invest into playtesting some of these decks. So just to like test yourself as a player, grow and gain strength as a player, it's good to exercise your mind. And I think a deck like this is a lot better than playing Arceus. Not to say play this over Arceus always, but I think it's worthwhile to playtest in addition to playtesting decks like Arceus. Understand the top 10, understand the top 20, and you'll feel a lot better going into events like NAIC. Cracking into our top 4 is going to be Lugia Colorless. Now, Lugia Colorless I think is a very powerful deck, and online it's absolutely superseded the single strike variant of the deck. Now, the goal of this deck is to just use Lugia V-Star, summon some Archeops into play, but now with all the special energies that we received in Paldea Evolved, like Jet Energy, Therapeutic Energy, Reversal Energy, and Luminous Energy, we do have access to different attacks now, so we can power up a Snorlax with Therapeutic Energy, so it's no longer asleep. We can get a bunch of energies into play and attack hard with Weird Ear. We have Luxray that can get Reversal Energy, so you kind of get a single energy attack mid-game if you're behind on prize cards. And Radiant Charizard can be used with Luminous Energy if your opponent only has 1 or 2 prize cards left, again as a single prize card attacker. I think this deck is kind of an evolution of our single strike build, and as we get more special energy, I think Lugia certainly has an opportunity to shine again. That doesn't mean single strike's bad, and I mean, if I had to put single strike in a position, I'd probably put it around 11th. Might be better than Chien-Pao, might be better than Arceus. Those are some slight variants, and like, if things change by 3-4 levels, it doesn't really matter. I think it's one of those things where we have a lot of opportunities to see success with those decks, but right now, I think that this build looks very good. I have seen lists that cut 1 Lumineon for Squawkabilly, but in terms of just like having options for different attackers, it's going to be good against a lot of the top decks, especially with having Snorlax. Like, this deck should have a pretty good matchup against Lost Zone decks. This deck should have a pretty good option, attacking options against a Gardevoir deck. So you'll see as we approach the top decks, but cracking in at number 4, we're getting pretty high up there. What's going to break our top 3? Let us know in the comments below. Splashing into our number 3 spot is Lost Zone Kyogre. Now, we've talked a little bit about how this deck, how Lost Zone decks are very good in this format, and I think Lost Zone Kyogre is a very special deck. Being able to do Lost Zone things at the beginning of the game, cram, Sableye your opponents, and still have access to Dragonite and Raikou against particular matchups. Late game, we're like, okay, you want to know what? We can use Kyogre, rip the top cards of our deck after we energy recycle our deck, and put those cards back in, knock out our opponent 250-250. I think this deck's cool because Iono is very good in the formats, and you might be like, yo, Iono is probably very good against Lost Zone box decks, and you would be correct. But the big thing that I do want to point out here is if Kyogre, if you use Sableye, Cramorant, Dragonite, Raikou, Radiant Greninja to draw only 2 prize cards in matchups where they're starting to get set up, you're not able to quickly outpace your opponents, you can then hold off to Kyogre, and in some situations, leave yourself till you're at 4 prize cards left, set yourself up to win that game. So even if they Iono you, it's the same thing as a Judge. Judge just played last formats, Lost Zone box deck, his best deck in formats. Iono being a kind of faux Judge doesn't necessarily change anything with the format. So in this case, if we play Kyogre differently or approach matchups differently or have a different mindset, we're not necessarily just going to lose. So it's something to consider right now when it comes to this deck. However, it might be slower than other Lost Zone box decks, which might be its demise. We'll have to find out and see which ones are seeing success if any, but I do think this is a very top choice. Any of the top 3 right now are interchangeable. So even though Kyogre is top 3, I think it could definitely be number 1 or number 2. We'll have to see what the other 2 decks are, and I'll let you make that decision for yourself. Getting our silver medal today, coming in at number 2, is Lost Zone Box Turbo. And this version plays Trekking Shoes, which makes it Turbo, and Lost Vacuum and Forest Seal Stone. So we can get more cards in the Lost Zone, kind of turbocharging, blazing our way through our Lost Zone. So we could even attack turn 1 with Mirage Gate, being able to have access to Dragonite V, Raikou V, and Radiant Greninja. So I'd have to say in a lot of testing and coaching this week, I've been able to pull off the turn 1 Lost Zone with Lost Vacuum, Forest Seal Stone, ripping my opponents to shreds. Turn 1 Greninja against Gardevoir can just be game shattering. Knocking out an Arc V with Dragonite V can be absolutely devastating to your opponent. I think this version's a little bit faster than the Kyogre build, but it does have less cool end-of-game maneuvers, so you will have to draw your prize cards throughout the game, not putting yourself to the Kyogre play, which does leave you a little bit more open to getting Iono'd. The goal is maybe we can get out a turn 2 Sableye, turn 3 Sableye, or Greninja ripping our opponent's routes. They don't get set up. Who cares if they don't get set up and they Iono us because they're just not set up. So if you kind of stop the source with the quickness, we're able to be good. So where this deck's quick, Kyogre can be a little bit slow in the late game. Both are very powerful decks. Not sure which one I like better. I'm leaning towards this one right now, especially as NAIC approaches. But I wouldn't be surprised to see me playing Kyogre or another Lost Zone variant, or even another deck at this point. I'm gonna try to figure out exactly where it's at, but this deck's hot. What's gonna be our number 1, everyone? Take your best guesses. I'm sure y'all know what it is. We're gonna jump into it 1 second. Let's check it out. Yo, here we are, the number 1 deck. And this is the mid-June 2023 best decks Paldea Evolved format. We have Gardevoir EX. So this is a traditional build of Gardevoir, but the thing is, we're just going to try to accelerate energies to our Gardevoir and our Zacian, Cresselia. We have ways to accelerate a lot of energies to our Pokemon. We have a lot of stadiums to counter Path of the Peak and other top decks. We have Super Rod to get our stuff back. And of course, we are the best Iono deck. Why are we the best Iono deck? Because we have opportunities to shuffle and put our hand underneath our deck while drawing cards with Kirlia, Shining Arcana, Gardevoir, and Radiant Greninja. So we have a lot of outs to Iono while also being able to punish our opponents with Iono themselves. So it's one of those things where I think this deck has a lot of options, very versatile. Might look easy and simple to play, but it's actually, there's layers of depths when it comes to sequencing with this deck. I think this deck is just absolutely fantastic across the board, and largely going to be one of the most played decks at NAIC. We already saw this deck see a lot of success at both the regionals in Milwaukee and in Fresno regionals. Will it continue to see success at Puerto Rico special event and at NAIC? I'm pretty sure yes. So keep your eyes out for this. Maybe we'll see some more elements from the Reversal Gardevoir, and they might merge into one deck, but I think right now this deck is sick. Arguably the best deck. I think it's the best deck. The reason why I'm not playing it is because I'm more comfortable playing Lost Zone Box, but I could very well see myself just playing this deck for the next week straight and trying it out at NAIC. So I'll have to see how it goes, but these are our top 10 best decks. Stay tuned for this. I try to get one of these out once per week, once every 2 weeks or so. So I'm going to have some awesome more content on the Shuffle Squad. Stay tuned for that. Let me close y'all out. And that's what we got going on for our top 10 best decks video today. Were we right? Is this the best deck in format? We'll have to find out. I think all the lists in this video are pretty crispy clean. I think they're all tournament ready for the most part. And give them a try. Let them play them at late night. Play them at your next League Cup, League Challenge, all that good stuff. Hopefully you get a chance to play them out. But that being said, we will be trying to cover this with NAIC coming up next week. Try to get it out there for at least the Wednesday, I think, before NAIC. Another iteration. So if you're preparing for that event, be sure to stay tuned for that video and all the rest of the content here that we have on the Shuffle Squad. Again, if you haven't already given this video a like, it does really help. Also, leave a comment, subscribe. All of that really does help. Really appreciate all of the support from everyone in the community, and we'll stay tuned. Again, Zach Lesage from the Shuffle Squad. I'll catch up with y'all real soon. Let me close y'all out. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.